Hi everyone and welcome to this new tutorial. In this example, we will see a more advanced way to connect C++ object to QML. In the previous tutorial, we have just seen a simple example of how the process works. So in this tutorial, we'll see a more detailed example where we declare properties, signals for our object that will be connected to QML. Let's get started. We'll first of all create a new class. Let's create a new class. R timer. So this is our new class. That we implement a custom timer. We include two timer. And that create a timer here. Okay. Now let's go to the CPP side. And add our timer. Okay. Then my timer, set interval, for example, and let's start the timer. Okay, now we will need to register our timer on the QML side. And we also need the class QML that is also used to register type to QML. So it's QML.h. Now let's register our R timer. Using QML register type. Now the URL, I will call it custom components minimum version, the major version 1, the minor version 0, and then the QML name R timer. Oh, sorry, the syntax. Good. So our R timer has just been registered to QML. Now we can call it inside our QML code. But before that, we'll need to import our custom components. I'll add the major version and the minor version. Okay. Now let's try. Okay, module not install. Okay, I made a mistake here. Components. Let's try again. Okay, so our custom components module is now found. So this is our error timer that we have on the QML side. Now what we are going to do is declaring a property to our error timer. For example, if you want to change the interval, we have to create a property that can be changed. So just below, you see this is a QProperty syntax. So you have QProperty, the type of the property, the name, the read, and then the get function, also the getter, write, the set function, also the setter, and notify signal. So you have a, a pretty rich syntax that shows how to implement a Q property. Now let's try it. I have to remind you that Q property must be above, so just before the public keyword. So you can add it after QObject. Now let's try an example. We'll create a property interval. QProperty, type of the property. An interval is an integer. What is the name of that property? Interval. Read. What is the name of the getter, the get function? We call it interval. The setter, we'll call it set interval. The notify function signal is interval change. So we lowercase I. Set interval. Okay, we'll put lowercase I everywhere. Good. Now we have to implement that setter and getter function. Let's implement them. We need to implement them in the public section. Void set interval. And also interval. Okay. So what should we do using set interval? In set interval, so we'll check if the timer of our the interval of our timer is equals to the current time. We return, so we don't do anything else. We stop our timer, then we call set interval again, and finally we start our timer. And then we need to emit the signals that the interval has been changed. So we'll use QEmit interval change. Okay. And then inside the interval function, we just return the current interval of our timer. And then we need to declare that signal interval change. Didn't declare it. Then we'll also add a timeout signal. Great. So we are done. We then need to test it. Before in the constructor, we'll connect our timeout signal. Okay. So we are done. We can now test it inside our QML file. Now we can add a property interval. Now interval property is recognized, and when there is a timeout, what do we do? We bring to the console maybe times of. Now let's check. Let's check the result. Oh, remember set interval. I made a small mistake. Okay, set interval. Okay, so you can just see that our time is up. Since the timer is repeating after each, I think, 5 second. Yes, after each 5 second, it will print times up. So the property we have just created is now connected to QML. All right. Now, what we are going to do now, we are going to declare a method and see how that method can be called in QML. So as I told you, you can declare a method using QInvocable. QInvocable, int, for example, random interval minimum maximum. So this is just a simple function that we declare using QInvocable. The function defines a random interval and returns an integer value. Well, let's implement that function. We can implement it here directly. Okay. Now, how to call that method in the QML file? We will just okay, the method is visible, so we can create a JavaScript variable. Let random interval equals random interval minimum 5, maximum 9, and then let's print the random interval. Okay, I need to change the name. Okay, first interval is 5. The second interval is 6. The third is 7, 6. Okay, so that function generating random interval can be directly called to our QML file. Alright guys, this was just a brief tutorial about how to creating custom classes in C++ and connecting them to QML. Also adding custom properties with setter and getter method, and also about how to connect a signal from a C++ object in QML, as well as how to call a function declared with QInvocable directly inside a QML file. Next tutorial, we will see how to export GUI-based classes, for example, like Paint, bring them to QML.